Hello, we're in the Sangre de Cristos up above Westcliff at the Alvarado campground, and we're doing some leaf peeping. Check this out. It's pretty. So the leaves are very pale this year and kind of orange because of lack of rain, but the sun shines through them. You know, they're all pretty. Pine trees are getting ready to drop their needles. You can see the brown, well, not in here particularly, but yeah. So I want to make a little video. I asked Paul to walk ahead because I get shy around him, even though he's heard all this. Um, so I have been thinking about writing another damn book, which I've tried to write a ton in my life. Had all kinds of ideas, and those ideas still sit there in little notebooks with the research and other books I want to read to add to it or whatever. But yet I have yet another one. I wanted to write a book called The Last Tree about the environment and how I've experienced it just in my lifetime. And I learned ecology when I was 12 years old from an art teacher. She talked about the upcoming fight for an EPA because it was 1970, 71. So the EPA wasn't passed by Nixon until 73. And I remember in those years, the Ohio River had caught on fire. Silent Spring, after almost 10 years, was starting to really reach into the American consciousness. The book by Rachel Carson about pesticides and what it was doing to the bird populations. I was very aware at that age of people dumping trash. So there was a commercial you probably all remember as a Native American in a canoe, and it's an anti-pollution commercial. We used to see it in the theaters too, and it was made fun of, and it stayed around a long time, just getting people to pick up their own trash, not throwing it around. We just walked through these woods. We could see old campgrounds. It looked like mostly where a bear had drug garbage from the campground down there and tooth through it, but a long time ago. They've also thinned this, we suspect, a long time ago. Not that long ago, but maybe 10 years ago. So there's lots of new trees growing, which is good to see, but it seems to me that it might create the same problem in a few years with too many small trees. But they'll withstand the heat better, I think the scientific process is. But I digress. I go back to, so when I was 14 and we moved to a big house in Maple Ridge in Tulsa. It was a big neighborhood. Bought a big, beautiful yellow brick home that was built by the Five Killers. They were Osage, oil rich, and they built it in 1920. And I realized that they would have been there when the rice riot moved down 21st Street right in front of the house. So, and there is a movie coming out called Killer of the Flower Moon. It just doesn't speak to one Osage tale of oil, but it happened to a lot of Native Americans in Oklahoma and other places. Just, add it to the list of degradations by colonizers. But, oh, look at that. So I was 14, we moved into this house and didn't have air conditioning. I had one little AC unit downstairs for this huge house. And I put my bed up against my window to the east where the breeze was coming and lay in the windowsill and realized as the heat kind of wafted up from the downstairs AC and the cars going by on 21st Street that we were heating up the planet. So I also knew when I was 21 that water was going to be commodified. There was a PBS article about it, and it scared me. That water was being bought up and commodified. And this was back in 1979. So in 8 years, we had the EPA. EPA is going around trying to get companies to clean up, even old companies like the Flint maker in New Jersey that left a Superfund site that had to be cleaned. Superfund sites were born. Canyon City had one. And the tax dollars were being used to clean up these places. And it felt like at the time that along with the civil rights movement and the women's movement and the gay movement, all these, the rise of AIM and the attention to the environment, that the generation prior to me, the 10 to 20 year olds, that people who were 10 to 20 years older than me when I was 12, were doing a good job in my mind. And then along came Reagan and chaos theory of economics and the move against government and the Forest Service and the public lands and corporate taxes. They didn't want to pay. They didn't want to have to adapt to environmental laws. They didn't want to have to continue to pay union wages. They didn't want to have to pay taxes. This was all planned 40 years ago by the likes of the Koch brothers and others. So in that time, I've always been aware. My mother said when I was 16, I jumped out of our car because somebody in front of us had laid a pop bottle out on the meridian turning left. I jumped out of the car, made him open his window. I said, "Here, you drop this." I was just incensed that after all of the advertising and communications and the change in politics that was allowing us to start to see these things. In 1988, that was when I believe that was when Jim Henson reported to Congress about our global warming had been going on for 30 years. 10 years in, Al Gore knew in a college class that we were heating up the planet. I bought his movie. We were encouraged to copy Inconvenient Truth and give it out. I did in 2004. But in between 81 and 79 to now, the corporations have commodified everything on the planet. They want it all, including our public lands. There's a Patagonia documentary called Public Lands you need to see. I've been aware of these things a long time. I taught my friend to recycle. I've helped stop a nuclear plant in Claremore. I have signed petitions, voted. Hearing very little about any of this in the media except where Jim Hansen was fired and vilified by the Reagan administration. As the rich have slowly been able to benefit from our public infrastructures, they have not paid taxes. I read one article to the tune of $10 trillion since the first Bush administration. So, not going further into the history of that, I started thinking, well, what if the last tree on the planet is... I just heard about the sycamore pass tree being cut down by some teenager. What the heck? Just wanton destruction. I saw the picture of that last tree and I went, oh my God. If I didn't understand environment at all and I wanted to look and see what was going on, I did what someone might do. I went onto my Smart News and started looking at the environmental stories. And because I watch I'm interested in the environment, I get mine fed to me. They put them up for me. The algorithms put them up for me. There's so much changing so fast. We are literally in a race. And there are very good people out there trying to help us run that race. Scientists and activists and volunteers and Forest Service people, and there's so many good people out there. So if you think you're alone and it's too big a problem, it will take all of us, every little bit of one of us. Ditch your AC, get a swamp cooler. Ditch your gas run heater, get a heat pump. Get some solar on your house, even a little bit. Get one little suitcase and use it. I remember when solar started being a big thing for watches. Remember that? Solar watches? motion watches. And then there was, which destroyed the clock makers, but yeah, the digital watch. But I remember the first solar calculator I had. I kept that thing for years. Solar lights, huge. Everybody had to have them. They're awesome. But they're made of plastic, right? We will never get rid of hydrocarbons. There are some things that need to be made of plastics, like hospital implements. Some of them are best in plastic. Hemp could take over plastic like it did at one time. Ooh, that was a big bird. What was that? Oh, there it is. Stellar Jay. So I'm going to try and link some of the articles I found. Two key ones was a production by Jeff Bridges. There's another one called Living While Dying. That was his. That really, really spoke to me about how we approach our thinking on climate change and what we've done. I remember King James had to make it under penalty of death if you threw your night soil, your shit and piss into the street. You had to go put them in the ditch boxes. Every area had a ditch box, looked like a big roll-off with wheels made of wood, and you threw it in there, and then they threw it in the ditch. So that was the sewage for the city of London. It was an improvement, but people had to be forced into it. We don't want to do that in democracy, so we encourage electric building by the car companies who have made mega profits and don't want to share it with their workers. One of the last unions on the planet, the UAW. But they were given subsidies to do that, to help them make the transition. I noticed there's been 2 gas stations built recently, one in Canyon City, City Market, and a Love's, which is going to have an RV park. I noticed the RV park was putting solar on their the coverings, the drive covers where people park. It was cool. I didn't notice charging stations. I don't know if City Market put in charging stations. It's interesting to me that every time we start to make some inroads in these directions, the Republicans, turn around and criticize it or try to stop it as some sort of communist plot or socialist plot, which they obfuscate and confuse together because they're totally separate. The socialism is what built our national parks, our national forests, our public lands, all those lovely campgrounds you like, all the parks and monuments you like. It was socialism that created Medicare, Social Security, because we are a community. You can't rah-rah about America and at the same time push rugged individualism. America as a great community and then push individualism. That's one of the things that was made a point in one of the movies I watched. I'm going to try and link them all. I thought what I would do is just take those, just a couple of weeks worth of environmental reporting that I had to ask for and start my book that way. But things are happening so fast right now. There is a looming government shutdown. Under Trump, he left the parks open and they were virtually destroyed. Trash. ATVers went into parts of Joshua Tree they shouldn't have gone and destroyed. People left garbage laying everywhere on the mall. Volunteers came to pick it up. This was not that long ago. We had 35 days of shutdown. Our national parks have received so much damage in the time they were left open without staff that they're still trying to deal with the damage and repair it. The money they lost so they could keep up with infrastructure still hasn't been given back to us from the government, from the House. They dole it out like old grandpas, Oh, you had a quarter allowance after all the work you've been doing. It's a pretty little spot. There's a spring up there. You can see the moss and stuff. So I'm sitting here, like today they discovered a new chemical emitted by trees that is very small but impacts rain production a great deal. Bill Gates was taken out of context about planting trees is silly. That's not what he said. He said that it's silly to think that planting a bunch of trees now will save us by 2030, 2050. He says it's going to take decades for that carbon sink if it can survive the temperatures. Northwest Colorado has no hunting season because of the extremes. The snow this year killed a lot of antelope, elk, deer. So no hunting tickets lotto tickets in Northwest. I have not seen any deer here yet, or animals. I did hear an owl, and there was coyotes in the valley, which was cool to hear. So they have something to eat. There's squirrels here and some birds. But I don't know if I can write it. I can't write it. Others are writing. Somebody wrote tyranny of the minority. That's a phrase I've been using for decades. They wrote a book about it. How this far-right fascist religious movement, given impetus under Trump, they're doing it now. There's like 15 of these people in Congress that are in the House that are. They reduced the defense secretary's wage to $1. The second black defense secretary. Trump has called for General Miley's death. He should be killed, he said. Well, Joe Biden said Assange should be killed too, which I don't like. So the bloody rhetoric, literally. But as I was perusing these articles, and you realize there's so many people working hard to make the change we need, but I don't think they understand the aggression of the other side that doesn't want it to happen. I love it that Governor Newsom is suing the oil industry for decades of lies and subterfuge and getting subsidies to trillions of dollars, holding us hostage. I think Shell has discussed to its stockholders starting to go green, and all hell broke loose from what I understand. I'm like, what? Come on. Which is harder? Truly, which is harder? Change the way we do things. As soon as they get an electric vehicle that can haul 7,600 pounds, I'll go get it. But we don't move hardly at all. Once or twice a month, we travel to a place that's 2 hours away, and we shut her down. We feel like we're lowering our footprint as much as possible. Our solar has already paid for the footprint on the trailer. We produce that much electricity, more than enough. We could probably power another trailer with what we have on the one. It's doable. And we don't feel deprived of anything at all. I think an individual learns of doing something that's harming, they will change. Eventually they change. We've got a huge problem with drugs in this country and what they call deaths of hopelessness because of the loss of unions and good jobs over the decades. People in their 50s who are 10 years younger than I thought they would have jobs to go to that their fathers had been in for decades, gave a good life, and they're gone with no replacements, no way to go to college, no way to go to Botech. So they're despairing. Homelessness isn't just a drug problem. We've always had the town drunk. And may always have the town drunk. Remember Andy Griffith and the town drunk? He used to come in and lock himself up. It's high rents and the commodification of housing and the withdrawal of government help, which kept people in housing We have to understand that any benefits this country has gotten has been mostly white. These are some of the things I've picked up from these documents and articles and videos. But the two most important ones that I felt were needed, that if you don't pay attention to any of the other articles I link, watch Patagonia public lands. Just Google it on YouTube. Also, look up Living While Dying. Very good article, very good video about how we should approach this in our thinking. And if you felt like you did everything you were asked to do and then find out recycling plastics was an oil business ploy to keep us fat and happy and thinking we were doing something, well, they got nothing coming. If you were the kind who went and got out the LED bulbs at much expense for your home, first thing they came out to lower your electric bill, only to find the electric company is doing fracking gas and charging you more for the privilege of having solar. I mean, look what Musk, he's not my favorite person, but he came up with a device that will lower your bill and help you get control of your electricity. And they tried to sue him, and it flopped because they didn't want this. It didn't hold. It got dismissed, and he went back to giving it away to anyone over 65. You have to watch out for the fake ones. That's how good it is. There are people trying to do something. Bill Gates said the two biggest things we have to change now are the way we do agriculture and cows. Those two things. We need to electrify our houses and our cars with solar and wind. Zephyrs. We could do zephyrs. Everybody had a huge antenna on their roof for TV. You put a zephyr in the same spot that old antenna used to go in, and you've got power. Batteries are coming along. My Switch bike used to have this huge, little chunky battery pack. They can now make them solid state. They're thin, almost the size of my phone, just a little bigger. The minerals needed for that, that's why they take your phone back, because they can recycle those minerals and plastics. We could do this. But people are scared. They're getting misinformation. They don't feel like they have the time to look it all up and watch it all and read it all. Even just being in our trailer, I haven't had time to watch every single video that I wanted to or read every single article. I just loaded them up. I got a couple dozen articles and about 6 videos on the environment. So we're in for some change. When I was doing integrative breath work, it was one of the things that we discussed a lot, the changes that were coming and the people who are scared of change. And they don't want to do it individually or in a group. But I see that they do. I hear that they do. And sometimes we have to talk ourselves blue for others to hear. The guy who the one who wrote the book about ice, the lost ice, he sold everything he had on an impulse, a spiritual impulse, and he went up there and he wrote this book about what was happening in the Arctic, just the Arctic. And when he came back, he turned it over to a friend. He said, nobody's going to read this. I can't publish this. It's not going to do any good. He was feeling very much in despair. And his friend said, listen, if your book helps one little worm in the Amazon forest survive because somebody cared about it, because of your book, then you need to write it. And there's a certain part of me that feels that way too. Overcoming the fear of rejection, the ego fear of not having it accepted. I can't do the big mover and shaker. I'm not a mover and shaker. So this is the best I can do. I love this planet and everything in it. But there's a point where you have to tell people they're just supposed to have compassion for, who are mean and selfish and greedy. You're a beautiful soul. I love you. Get the fuck out of the way. You're not helping. You're not listening. You're acting like a child who wants what it wants, and it wants now. I am tired of surface acting. I'm going to try and go back to work. And I do want to focus on climate anxiety, solesthesia, and environmental melancholia. There's a book that's been written. See, somebody's already written about it, probably better than me. And help people understand, even if it's just one person at a time. I said it a long time ago. If everything that I understand and my work and breath work had expanded my consciousness so much that I almost can't function in regular society, if I help one person, then that's what I can do. Take care of yourself. Watch your head.